Talking Pints is Colonel Bob Stewart. He won the DSO. He commanded British or UN forces, actually. He UN forces in Bosnia. So he's seen a few things there that we're going to talk about. And you're now a Conservative Member of Parliament after all those years in the Army. Bob, you're an unusual beast in Parliament today because 20, 30 years ago, chaps like you with distinguished military service were two a penny. They'd served in the Second World War or whatever it was. Not many of you now in Parliament, I wouldn't have thought, with military experience.
No, really weird, isn't it? Because, you know, the normal default position for army officers is to loathe politicians.
Yes.
So I have a certain amount of SH1T from the regiment for being a politician, and I can tell you it comes in quite a barrage for like Farage.
And I mean, you know, you were in the army a long time, and you finished up with a big job in Bosnia, which was a pretty unpleasant place to be at the time. Well, some terrible things were happening there just 30 years ago, isn't it?
Well, the only thing I can say about that is that my men and some women saved one heck of a lot of lives in Bosnia. And, you know, someone said to me, well, you saved a lot of Muslim lives. And I said, no, I didn't. I saved human beings. And I didn't do it. All of us did it. It was pretty horrid at times, some of the things we saw. But my goodness, I remember one thing. When I was being told by the Ministry of Defence we might have to withdraw you, and I said, well, I'm not sure that's a great thing. I spoke to the men, and they said, we're not leaving here, sir. We are saving these people's lives. We're not leaving here. And I just thought, my God, I might be faced with a mutiny if I might just have to go with them and do a sort of Captain Bligh. No, what was it? Fletcher Christian thing. And go with the men and say we're not leaving. But it didn't come to that. In the end, we were never ordered to withdraw.
You did your military service. You got the DSO. Which there aren't that many of again these days. And so well done you for all that service you gave the country and the job you did in Bosnia. What propels a guy like you to decide that running for Parliament is suddenly a good idea?
Well, I've always been quite good at bullshitting. So, there we are. The first requirement...
He's very naughty. He's very, very naughty.
Very big requirement of a politician to be able to speak in public, and that's what I mean.
Yep.
And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed debates, and I enjoyed a bit of politics. I've always been a Conservative. So have you, by the way. You're a Conservative at heart. You can come back, Nigel.
No, I mean,
you can come back.
Well, I mean, I'm hearing Michael Gove, you know, today, not sounding like a Conservative, sounding like a sort of old-style Stalinist statist. Yeah. I mean, it's all quite worrying, isn't it?
Well, Michael's trying to do the best. I mean, we don't quite know where all this is going, but the government is trying to do its best. And I'm not in the government, but my goodness, I'm quite glad sometimes when some of these decisions are having to be made. The one thing I will say, and I've spoken to Boris Johnson about this, he doesn't like any of these restrictions, none whatsoever. He doesn't want us to have COVID passports.
But why? So why are we having them?
Because Nigel, because he's getting all this advice from the so-called experts, and if it goes wrong, it's not you, it's not me, it's him that will take the buck.
Just as it was you in Bosnia.
Yeah,
that's what leadership is. Yeah, and the question I'm asking you, and Boris is a very jolly fellow, and all the rest of it, is he a leader?
Yes, he is actually. He's also a leader that wins elections.
That's different. That's different.
But, you know, and that is what is required. You can't be a politician if you're actually not going to be in the lead at some stage. And that's... I mean, you know that.
No,
I'm sorry, I'm putting the boot back in for you.
No, but I just think he's more of a cheerleader than a leader, and a very good cheerleader, and good at spreading optimism and all of those things.
And he's actually pretty good on the quiet. You know, people don't see Boris Johnson on the quiet because it's all sort of flamboyant and that sort of stuff. But, my God, Boris Johnson is a good bloke, OK? And that's the reason why the north of England has often said, well, we're not particularly keen on the Conservative Party, but my goodness, we're like Boris.
Yeah, and Brexit has transformed the landscape.
Well, come on, so you are very much involved in that.
Yeah, no, Brexit's changed everything in terms of parties and how we vote. But, Bob, I must ask you this. We've had a Conservative Prime Minister since 2010, and yet we have seen, pretty much all through those years, quite relentless cuts to our armed forces. I mean, the British Army now is, I think, smaller than it's been since the reign of Queen Anne or something like that. How's it been for you, sitting there as a backbencher, watching what's happening to the services?
Bloody painful. And I tell you why. When I joined the Army, I went to Sandhurst in '67. I was 2 years training. I was out when I was 20. I joined my regiment, the Cheshire Regiment, the best regiment in the British Army, of course.
Of course.
Of course. And the regiment was 750 strong. When I commanded it, 26 years later or whatever, it was 525. And it's still called a battalion, a regiment and a battalion. And what's actually happened to the armed forces is they continue to call it an army. An army is technically over 100,000 personnel. We haven't got that, certainly not in uniform at any one time. So if you ask me what it is, it's very, very painful. And most recently of all, actually, the battalion, the regiment I commanded, has lost one of its 2 battalions. So that really hurts. So am I happy about it? No, I'm not. Can I see us doing it another way? Well, to be honest, my point is this, and I've made this in Parliament. When I understand that we're never going to fight a war again, Nigel, like we did the Second World War. It's all going to be about cyber and artificial intelligence and satellites,
but we'll still need men.
Yeah, well,
and
here's
women.
the point. That stuff is the future, which might well be a future war. But we haven't fought an all-out war, perhaps Korea, since the Second World War. But every operation we've been on, every single operation, has required manpower. And we've actually cut the manpower down. I'm sorry to criticise the Ministry of Defence on this, and I know they don't have a choice, and I know the government may not have a choice, but you asked me the question, and I'll tell you, it bloody hurts. Okay?
No, I'm sure it does. But the government does have a choice, actually, and it seems that defence, the armed forces, despite the way the public feel about them, which is huge support for the people that serve in the armed forces and for veterans too, it seems to be quite a low priority. When you look at the world in terms of the threats, potential threats that we face, countries that we face, what worries you looking into the future?
The Chinese. What's happening in China and the expansion of China seems to be really threatening. What's happening in the South China Sea, the threat against Taiwan, the islands being occupied, the Paracels, and the Spratly Islands, and military bases being put on there, their armed forces expanding at one heck of a rate. They're moving into the Indian Ocean and even moving into the Arctic. Why? Why are they doing that? We haven't mentioned Hong Kong or other... I mean, frankly... and then the attacks on our, intellectual property, the stealing of intellectual property, and the attacks on our industry as such, which could be... So it worries me. So you've asked me that question, and the answer to me is what the Chinese are doing, because actually they're buying up more and more of our industry. They already own a huge chunk of American industry, and that is worrying.
No, well, you've given a very strong answer on that. And interestingly, I've talked in the last week to Vince Cable and to Stanley Johnson, and they take the view, well, China's the big dominant economy, and that's where the money is, and we have to compromise on these things. And I have to say I'm rather more in your camp on this.
Well, Stanley's a great guy. I'm really great. I don't want to...
Yeah, he's wrong.
He's wrong.
Yeah, he's not here to defend
Cable
himself.
Is plain wrong. Plain wrong.
So what happens to you politically? We've got boundary changes coming up. I think your seat, Beckenham, is that subject to a few changes?
Yeah, a bit sad. I mean, it looks like it becomes much more of a marginal, but we'll fight it. We'll fight it hard. And, Beckenham must not be anything but Conservative. And you would support that, wouldn't you? I might ask you to come and campaign for
Well,
me.
you never know. I might just come and tour a few pubs with you or something like
Well,
that.
we've done the Two Doves is one where...
Yeah, no, I know. I like it very much indeed. Yeah, don't worry, I know it. So the plan is to stay in politics?
Yeah, I want
keep going?
The plan is for me, as long as I'm fit and as long as I've still got my marbles, and I think I have so far, I really do absolutely enjoy the privilege, and it is a privilege, of being a Member of Parliament. I still, every time I put my big fat bottom on that green leather, I think, you are very lucky to be here. Are you sure they've chosen the right guy?
You still think that?
I still think that. You know, and I do like talking in Parliament. As I say, I like... bullshitting was a joke.
Yeah.
I do actually like it. It is a wonderful challenge.
Second warning, 3 strikes, you're out.
Oh, is it? Oh, sorry.
Go on.
Is that a bad word these
Apparently.
days?
But how do you... I mean, you are not a career politician. You've gone into politics after your main career. And I think people like you give something back. You've got expertise in a certain area. What's it like for you being surrounded by careerists, straight out of Oxford with a degree in PPE? How do you get on with that lot?
Well, I think they're very amusing sometimes, actually. I mean, I remember sitting next to Sir Peter Tapsell, who's the oldest. You would remember Peter. Yeah. What a great guy, you know. And he'd been there since the mid-50s. And I remember thinking, I was sitting beside him, and I said, right, I'm going to get really going. I'm going to have to say something now. And he turned to me, he said, I wouldn't if I was you, boy. Just shut up and sit down. I took his advice. Now, some of these people don't shut up and sit down. They actually go straight in, and they shouldn't. They should actually just calm down a bit, on both sides.
Do you get on with the career politicians?
Well, mostly. I find it difficult sometimes with some people who are so obviously ambitious.
Yeah.
The people I dislike are the people that have no time for others, you know. And in Parliament, when you have a new intake, Nigel, for the first 3 months, everyone's charming to the staff, the doorkeepers and the rest of it.
Yeah, as they should be.
As they should be. And then some people start to believe the publicity, and they start ignoring them and actually, in sometimes, being slightly rude. That's a mistake, because one day, those guys will be required to help you. And if you haven't been particularly kind to them, they'll let you down.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't...
Yeah.
I would do the same.
And it's what you deserve. Well, Bob, keep doing what you do. Keep being as politically incorrect as you possibly can be. That's how I introduced you before this interview. You haven't...
Have I not?
You haven't let me down at all.
I'm absolutely delighted. I'll go back. And now I'll be pinged not by the NHS when I get off this call, but by the Chief Whip.
Yeah, well, once again, the Chief Whip will have words to say. But Bob Stewart, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on Talking Pints.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.